If you just keep your head down and work hard, it is so unlikely that you will be working on the thing that is the highest and best use of your time.
Yeah.
It is so unlikely that you will stumble into the optimal way to run your business. The only way that you can really figure out the optimal way or get closer to the ideal way is to...
So when we're coaching these businesses that have 2 to 30 team members, and there'll be a whole bunch of those in the audience, a whole bunch of them are 200 team members too, but a bunch of them are in that smaller stage. I remember being at that stage. Through the Atomic Habits lens, how would you coach them to organize their day? Force ranking by priority, or how would you coach them to organize their time?
Yeah. There's actually one question that I come back to a lot when determining priorities, and it's, what is the work that keeps working for me once it's done? So let me give you an example. So I wrote Atomic Habits, a book comes out, I'm going to do a bunch of interviews to try to promote the book. So I did podcast interviews, I did radio interviews, I did TV stuff. And the radio interviews were fine, but I've kind of decided that I'm not going to do radio interviews anymore unless there's a podcast component to it. Because once we get off air, whether that 5-minute segment or 10-minute segment or whatever, now the work that I just put in has vanished. And with a podcast, it gets recorded and it gets published on, YouTube and social media and elsewhere and so on. And, at this point, I've done 250 plus podcasts about the book. And so there's someone somewhere listening to one of those right now while we're talking. And it's almost like there are two versions of James out there right now. There's the one right here that's live talking to you. And then there's the other one that put in that previous effort that's being listened to right now. And, there are a lot of things in life and in business for sure that are kind of like weeding a garden. Like nobody likes weeding a garden, but you just got to do it because the weeds have to get out there for the garden to thrive. So not everything that you do can fall into this category, but if you can just do one thing a day that continues to work for you once it's done, where that work starts to stack and accumulate, it doesn't just vanish once the time is gone. Man, you turn around in like a year or 2 or 5, and you have this tidal wave of previous effort that continues to work for you. So I think the answer to what should we be spending time on is, what is the work that's going to keep working for us once it's done? And can we find a little bit of time today to do one of those things? And if we can do that today and do it tomorrow and just keep stacking the days up, you're going to end up in a really good place in a year or 2.
Yeah, and while you have to spend some time putting out fires, it's just mandatory. The building will burn down if you don't do it. But if you spend all your time putting out fires, almost none of those fire calls are things that last. They're almost always instantaneous issues, and they evaporate when you're done. And so you're not, it's the opposite of what you're saying. When all you are is a fireman running from fire to fire to fire to fire to fire, you're being reactive rather than proactive in everything you're doing. And you're not managing your time. It's managing you. And you're not working on things that last.
This doesn't work for everybody, but and it doesn't even work for me all the time. About 70% of the time, probably, I leave my phone in another room until lunch each day. And so I get the morning to work on my agenda rather than responding to everybody else's agenda or responding to the fires. And I don't know what version of that will work for you if you're listening to this right now, but try to figure out some version that does work for you, whether it's the phone until lunch or whether it's carving out an hour in the morning or whatever. But there needs to be some dedicated space where you can work on the thing that accumulates, not the thing that evaporates, where you can work on the thing that's your priority rather than just responding to the rest of the team.
Yeah, when you work for the phone,
don't protect that time. Yeah, it just gets swallowed up.
Exactly. When you work for the phone instead of it working for you, when you work for the email, you feel a slave to the email chain instead of the email being a tool that causes efficiency in your organization or causes work to get done or productivity or whatever heading we want to put it in, then you are a slave to the stinking little box that you carry in your pocket. And a whole bunch of folks are falling into that trap.
It's tough because, email and phones and whatever, like they're useful. They allow us to reach tons of people. They scale and so on. But there's that line by Chris Sacca where he says, your email inbox is a to-do list to which anyone in the world can add an item. And, it's like you have to take control of it. Otherwise, it's going to start taking control of you.
Well, and you can't, it's where your ability to actually think about the problem that's in front of you, because you've got this distraction laying under your right hand, buzzing and beeping, and your brain just will not stay on the problem. And we're creating, even if you're not ADD, you're creating an ADD environment for your thought patterns.
You know, Dave, the word you just used, think, is so obvious, but it's so easy to lose space for that. I would say this is probably one of my best habits as an entrepreneur, which is I have a weekly reflection that I do. So every Friday, it doesn't take that long. It's maybe 15 or 20 minutes, but I have space to actually sit and think rather than just be working. And then I also do an annual review. But I think that it is so unlikely if you just keep your head down and work hard. And by the way, working hard is very important. It's not that you shouldn't work hard. It's just that if you just keep your head down and work hard, it is so unlikely that you will be working on the thing that is the highest and best use of your time. Yeah. It is so unlikely that you will stumble into the optimal way to run your business. The only way that you can really figure out the optimal way or get closer to the ideal way is to have a little bit of time to think. You need a period of reflection and review to look at what you've actually been doing and what you could potentially be doing and to try to close that gap. And the people who don't have enough time to think and are just busy working really hard, it's just really hard for you to find yourself doing the optimal thing.
Yeah, it's very difficult to be at your peak of productivity or efficiency when all you are is frenetic and responsive rather than proactive. And so, you know, we have 6 drivers that drive business. One of them is plan, have a plan, and be executing on the plan. And so people never win at anything accidentally, randomly. They win as a series of incremental, intentional acts, and that's exactly what you're describing. And so,
let me give you one of my favorite little business plan analogies and metaphors that I like to use. So I think a lot of times when people think, "Oh, I need to have a plan," they feel like, "Oh, I need to plan every step out. I need to know the whole path." But the model that I like is called ABZ. So I got this from this entrepreneur named Sean Puri. So ABZ. So point A is an honest assessment of where you are right now. Just being self-aware, it's trying to understand what exactly am I dealing with? What resources do I have? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are we facing? Point Z is where you want to end, where you want to end up, that desired future state. So it's, you know, it's like a mountain in the distance. B is your next step. And the secret of the whole thing is that you actually only need to know B and Z. You don't actually need to know points C through Y, because you take the next step and you get there and then you reassess and you do A, B, Z all over again. And it's kind of like driving a car toward the mountain in the distance and like the valley in front of you is foggy and misty and you can't really see where the road goes. But your headlights shine far enough for you to see the next step. And as long as you can see the next step and you still know what the mountain is that you're driving toward, then you can make the journey that way.